Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Cone back here again today with another video, and today I want to talk about one of my biggest winners of the offseason so far in the Los Angeles Lakers. I've loved basically every move they've made, whether it was their draft picks, the players that they brought back into the fold in free agency, the new additions they made in free agency, their philosophy in general. Everything that the Lakers have done so far has been great in my book, and I want to talk all about those moves and why I love each and every one of them later on in the video. But first, I want to begin going back to last offseason because I think comparing where they were then to where they were now just showcases how impressive this Lakers front office has been in terms of turning this team around in just a year span. Like, things were looking really bad an offseason ago, and now they look like one of the best teams in the entire NBA. Going into last offseason, LA had just had the worst record of the entire LeBron James era. It was a complete disaster of a year. They missed the play-in tournament entirely. It's not even like they were there and ended up losing and not making the playoffs. They went 33-49. It was awful, and there were a number of reasons for why, many of which carried over into the offseason, which is why it was looking so bad for them. Number one, the Russell Westbrook trade was not a good decision. As a Thunder fan and someone who has been a big fan of Russ his entire career, I really wanted to see this thing work, and I convinced myself that it would work with him as a secondary playmaker and ball handler alongside LeBron James, playing off of Anthony Davis, who I thought Russ could elevate to maybe an MVP level. It just did not work out. The play styles didn't click. There was overlap in too many of the skill sets. You also did not have great play from some of the veteran free agents that they tried to bring into the fold to help them compete. They were an old roster, and it showed on a nightly basis. Plus, LeBron James and Anthony Davis themselves had significant injuries at one point or another throughout the season. Overall, it was a complete disaster, and again, heading into the offseason, a lot of those problems lingered. The depth was bad because a lot of the veterans that you had were not good, and a lot of them were just on one-year minimum deals, so you had to find a way to fill out the roster with players that would somehow help you improve. And with three max contracts in AD, LeBron, and Russell Westbrook, it was really hard to do so. I thought they did a pretty good job, but overall it didn't feel like it was going to be enough. Plus, again, you have the problem with the three stars not fitting with Russ, LeBron, and Anthony Davis. You could trade Russell Westbrook, but his trade value was at the lowest it ever was. So it's not like you were going to get another star in exchange for him. You're probably going to get a couple of really solid players to round out your rotation. And there were some good potential deals out there. One that was rumored for a while was Russ alongside one or both of their first-round picks in exchange for Miles Turner and Buddy Hield, but that never materialized. And even if they did make that trade, nobody knew if that would actually make them championship contenders. And with those last two first-round picks that they had in their war chest, if they got that deal wrong, they were completely screwed because they would have no significant assets to make any upgrades otherwise. So they started the season with Russ, LeBron, and AD as their big three with a very mess supporting cast under new head coach Darvin Ham, and things were terrible to begin the year. They were 0-5, I think, to start things off. I know they were 2-10 after 12 games. The defense did look good, but the offense was horrific. There was no three-point shooting whatsoever on the roster. Like, it was historically bad. I think they shot like 9% from three for their first few games or something like that. They could not hit a perimeter shot. It looked like 90s basketball out there at some times. It was bad. And again, it felt like there was no real path to them getting better at all in the short term. LeBron James and Anthony Davis were still really good, but you have to wonder, is this just another wasted year for two players who probably don't have that long left as some of the best in the world? LeBron James has been one of the best players since he entered the league back in 2003, but he was going into his 20th season and he's 38 years old. Sure, he did end up still being one of the best players on the planet this past season, but how much longer is that going to last? And injuries have really started to rack up with him. Like just this past year, he had a foot injury that really nagged him all throughout the end of the season. How long before those injuries continue to pile up and LeBron eventually starts declining? Because it's going to happen at some point. Anthony Davis was really good this past season, but injuries have always been a concern with him. So you have to take advantage of him being one of the best players in the world until those injuries start to build up and he really starts to decline, which I think is possible in not too many seasons. So not only is there the pressure of being bad in a big-time market like Los Angeles, but also there's the pressure of somehow finding a way to win with LeBron James and Anthony Davis probably not having that long of a championship window as a duo. Now, the Lakers did manage to turn themselves around, particularly led by, again, LeBron James, who still remained one of the best in the world in his 38-year-old season, alongside Anthony Davis, who bounced back after a couple of up and down seasons to have one of his most dominant years in a really long time. You got some great play from some of the supporting members, especially on the defensive end. The offense was still an incredible struggle, but defensively, the Lakers locked up. Anthony Davis played some good ball. LeBron James did LeBron things, and overall, overall, the Lakers managed to stay afloat until about midway through the season, but they weren't championship contenders. They were hovering right around that play-in range, especially after they started so roughly, and it felt like they still probably were not going to get up to that championship level at any point this season. But at the deadline and a little bit beforehand too with the Rui Hachimura trade, Rob Palinka proved a lot of his doubters, me included, wrong. I thought he had completely blundered this Lakers title window with basically all of his moves since they won it all back in 2020, but in particular in that 2021 offseason. But this past year, the trades that he made mid-season that turned them into an eventual championship level squad were incredibly impressive. It started off by getting Rui Hachimura for Kendrick Nunn, who really didn't play that much whatsoever for the Lakers, and Rui ended up playing a massive role for LA this season. They also got DAngelo Russell, who had his ups and downs, but overall was big in helping the Lakers get to where they got to, as well as Jared Vanderbilt and Malik Beasley for Russell Westbrook and one of those first-round picks. He managed to turn Russ's contract and one of those first into multiple valuable role players, as well as Kendrick Nunn, who again did not really play, into Rui Hachimura, who was a massive piece of their success in the second half of the season. They also added some peripheral pieces like Mo Bamba and Devon Reed, but those guys that I mentioned first were some amazing acquisitions that really helped the Lakers turn things even more around. This was also bolstered by Austin Reeves having a massive breakout second year. After going undrafted and being picked up by the Lakers and having a really solid rookie campaign, year two was huge for him, especially when LeBron James went down at the end of the season. Austin Reeves stepped up. He became one of the best foul drawers in the entire league. He was knocking down big-time shots. His offensive explosion kind of came out of nowhere. He was a great as an offensive connector. The playmaking was there. The ball handling, he really just put it all together in the second half of this past season, becoming on most nights the Lakers' third best player alongside AD and LeBron. Through all of this, the Lakers went from a team that was 2-10 to a team that made the Western Conference Finals. It was a masterclass from GM Rob Palinka, and he managed to turn this team back to the identity that they had when they won the title in 2020. It's LeBron, it's Anthony Davis, and a great cast of role players. That's an identity that again won them a title. I'm so glad that they finally went back to it. And sure, they got swept in the Western Conference Finals by the Nuggets, but the fact that they even made it there after starting 2-10 is a massive accomplishment, and plus, all those games that they lost were pretty close. Like if a couple shots go the Lakers' way, there's a real chance that it's a much longer series. It was not as one-sided as a sweep might make it seem, is basically what I'm getting at here. And I think the Lakers were pretty firmly the second best team in the West after they made those deals. It was incredibly impressive what we saw from LA over the course of the second half of the season. So coming into the summer, the Lakers had a much clearer outline of exactly what they needed to do and a much better base to begin with. All they had to do was make slight upgrades when possible while maintaining most of this core group. And that's exactly what they did, and in the process, again, have become one of my biggest winners of the entire offseason so far. Mainly, I thought their free agency was stellar. They brought in impact players on the peripherals while also maintaining their core with some pretty solid deals in general. Probably my favorite one of the entire offseason for them is the Austin Reeves contract. You knew they had to bring him back. He's one of their best young players. He's 25 years old, so he's still got some upside in the tank. And again, he was probably their third most important player on most nights alongside LeBron James and Anthony Davis. I know a lot of people think that it's just the Lakers media machine that is hyping up Austin Reeves, that he's actually not that good. That's not the case. Austin Reeves is legitimately a really good player, especially when you put him in the context of LeBron James and Anthony Davis. He just makes so much sense to have as a connecting piece on this roster. And a lot of people thought he could get as much as like 25, even up to $20 million, but they signed him for just 4 years, $54 million. Like that's, what, $13 million roughly a year? That's such a steal for a guy in Austin Reeves who does so much for your team. Again, he's a solid initiator. He's a ball handler. He showed an ability to bait fouls when his shot isn't falling, or even if it is, he just is able to draw contact. He's a solid additional playmaker that can find teammates off of drives. He can create his own offense himself off of drives, whether he's attacking the basket, pulling up in the mid-range. He's also just good to spot up on the three-point line if the Lakers need him to do that. He can attack closeouts. He can do a little bit of everything. He's just a great player to have on this roster, a great player in general. He's not some overhyped Lakers guy. Austin Reeves is just really good, and I think $54 million over 4 years for a guy like him is an absolute steal. I also really like them bringing back Rui on a 3-year, $51 million deal. He was amazing in the playoffs for the Lakers, knocking down outside shots pretty consistently, especially in that Memphis series where he looked like Klay Thompson at times. He played some really solid defense matching up with Nikola Jokic at some moments in that Western Conference Finals series. He's he's just a really consistent force at that 4 spot, which allows Anthony Davis to consistently play the 5 without worry. I really like what he brings to the table. Now, $17 million might seem like a bit much for Rui, but he's young. The salary cap keeps rising every offseason, so that deal will look better as time goes on. And if they can win a title with him on the team, who cares how much you're paying him? I also like the DAngelo Russell deal. 2 years, $37 million for D'Lo. Again, $18 million might feel like a bit much for D'Lo after how he struggled in the playoffs sometimes, but he was really big in them even getting to the playoffs in the first place and helping them turn things around right there at the end of the regular season. And he did have some really solid playoff moments. He brings some playmaking and some outside shooting to a roster that definitely could use more of that. Plus, it's just a 2-year deal, so if it doesn't work out, he'll be off your books in a couple of seasons, and it's a deal that's pretty tradable. If a deal does become available for you to upgrade at the point guard position, you could throw his contract in there, as well as another one somewhere on the roster, one of your picks, and you could probably get a decent upgrade at the PG spot if that opportunity ever does arise. Plus, with the rise of Austin Reeves and some of the other additions that the Lakers made that we're about to get into, D'Lo isn't that important on your roster anymore. You're not asking him to do quite as much, which I think is good for DAngelo Russell. I don't think he should be in an incredibly featured role on a championship contender. Having him as just one of those really important supporting players, I think is a great spot for him to be, and I think the Lakers did the right thing by bringing him back. I know a lot of Lakers fans kind of soured on D'Lo, but ultimately, I think it was the right call. Even just bringing back these 3 guys, I think it would have been a successful free agency for the Lakers, but they also brought in a few really fun and impactful players who I think could be big for this team in this upcoming season. The favorite addition of mine is Gabe Vincent. They gave him 3 years, $33 million, so about $11 million a year. I love it. He was one of the heroes for the Heat this past season in their shocking finals run. He's a feisty point of attack defender at the point guard spot. He started there their entire run, knocked down some big shots, was just overall a great perimeter player, and I think he's going to bring a lot of that to the table for this Los Angeles Lakers roster. Now, he is prone to some cold stretches, and really he was not that good of a three-point shooter in the regular season, but if he can become anything like his playoff self over the course of the entire year, which I think is somewhat possible because he's going to be playing alongside LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Austin Reeves, DAngelo Russell, he's going to get probably more wide-open threes than he's ever gotten in his entire life. He's not going to be asked to do that much. I think this is a role that Gabe Vincent can really thrive in, and he gives them a fun offset alongside DAngelo Russell. If one of them's struggling, the other one can go in and start or close games. It's kind of similar to what they had in D'Lo and Dennis Schroeder, but I think I like this fit even better. Then they added Taurean Prince on about a $4 million a year deal, which again, I absolutely love. He feels like the perfect wing for this team. He brings defense, he brings three-point shooting. He shot around 40% from deep on catch and shoot threes this past season. He was knocked down the corner. He's just a reliable bench wing on a team that's really been looking for some over the past few off seasons. I love the Taurean Prince pickup, and I think Lakers fans are really going to come to love him over the course of this season. And finally, they wrap things up by bringing in two interesting young guys in Cam Reddish and Jackson Hayes. Cam Reddish in particular has shown a lot of flashes of being a really good player, but he's just struggled to put it all together. In LA, he's not going to be asked to do too much, which might be good for him. It just allows him to focus on what he's good at, try developing those skills alongside Phil Handy, who has shown an ability to help young players find roles in the league. And again, if it doesn't work out, he just sits on the bench and he's not really a part of your rotation because overall the Lakers at this moment do have a pretty deep squad. So maybe Cam Reddish comes in and plays some big time minutes if he does end up blossoming, but if he doesn't, it's a couple year deal and really there's nothing lost. For Jackson Hayes, it's somewhat of a similar story. He's another player that's shown some really fun flashes, but has never really put it all together. He's a fun, energetic, athletic big off the bench who could give you some fun lobs and some moments if you need somebody to step in, but overall he's not a great player at this moment. Again, it's going to be up to his development for him to really become an impactful player on this roster, but I don't mind taking the chance on him just as a depth swing. If he turns into a player on this team, great. If he doesn't, it's really nothing lost. I would still like to see the Lakers bring in a more reliable backup big than Jackson Hayes. Maybe it's Mo Bamba, who didn't play a lot this past season, but also dealt with some injuries, so that somewhat derailed his momentum in the rotation. Maybe it's him, who still is out there looking for a deal. Maybe it's somebody else out there in the market. There are still some interesting bigs, but overall, what the Lakers have done in free agency has been amazing so far. And just as the icing on the cake, I also really like what the Lakers did in the draft. Jalen Hood-Schifino is a super interesting combo guard who I think has a ton of potential. They're not going to have to ask him to play too much in his first season. He'll probably just work on developing his game and polishing his game overall. And I think he could be ready to make a real impact by next season, or even, maybe towards the end of this year if they need him to play and stay the absence of a guard who's dealing with some injuries. I also really like Max Lewis, taking a swing at him at the 40th overall pick, one of the most intriguing upside picks in this entire draft. He's got a ton of offensive upside, like ridiculous amounts of offensive upside that he showed at Pepperdine. If that skill translates, if he polishes up his game, I think he could be the steal of the draft, and he just gives the Lakers another piece to develop in the background as they keep competing at a high level. So in conclusion, the Lakers managed to add more reliable role players, retain key pieces of their core, drafted well, and most importantly, they didn't overreact and pursue big name players. They could have made a push for Kyrie Irving, for a number of other all-stars that are out there on the market and available, but instead they stuck to their guns, kept with these high-level role players that helped them get to the Western Conference Finals, and made the roster even better with their additions. I think they've got a real argument to be the second best team in the Western Conference right now, behind the Denver Nuggets. Now, you might say that they're maybe the third, the fourth, but I think at the very least, they're top four, maybe top five, you could push an argument for. But for me, I think the Lakers are a top three team in the West at the moment. If LeBron James and Anthony Davis do stay healthy, that's of course always a caveat with this duo, especially as of late. If they're able to stay healthy, if LeBron, which by the way, also, I know there was that rumor about LeBron James retiring that he mentioned after he lost to the Nuggets. He's not going to retire. I would be stunned if he did, so I'm just going to keep moving on as if there's no chance of that happening. But again, if LeBron James and Anthony Davis can stay healthy in this upcoming season, and the role players play as well as I think that they will, the Lakers are again going to be right up there in championship contention as one of the best in the entire league. It's just crazy to think about where they were a year ago at this point when I was making that video talking all about how I thought the Lakers had failed LeBron James, how they failed Anthony Davis, and how there was really no shot to them becoming championship contenders, it felt like, at any point soon. Instead, here they are again. They made the Western Conference Finals. They somehow got better, and Rob Palinka and that front office have proven me wrong again and again since I made that video. With all that being said, I appreciate you all watching. Let me know in the comment section below if you think the Lakers are top three, top two, or maybe even top one team in the Western Conference. Do you disagree with me and think that they're not a championship contender? Let me know all that. As always, I'd love to hear what you all have to say. Please leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of these videos. Also, just to let you know, uploads might be a bit inconsistent over the next 4 or 5 days. I'm going to be in Las Vegas for the NBA Summer League, so I've got some videos pre-recorded, and if there's anything big that happens, I'll probably film a reaction. I might do a vlog of my time at Summer League as well, so there will still be content, but there'll probably be a few more days where there's not a video. Just keep that in mind in case you're wondering. Also, if you're at Summer League and you see me, come over and say hi. I'd love to meet some of y'all while I'm there. Yeah, so I appreciate y'all watching. I'll see y'all later. Ruan, say back.